The Fabelmans is the newest film directed by Steven Spielberg, which, just knowing that, already made this a must-see film for me. I've talked about Spielberg a little bit in the past. I reviewed West Side Story last year. He is just a filmmaker that I have a lot of love and respect for. I enjoy a lot of his films. But what made this an even more must-see event for me personally was the fact that this is supposedly the last film to be directed by Spielberg, but also to have the score composed by John Williams. So the last time that these two are ever actually working together on a project. I don't believe it has been officially confirmed, but I've heard and read that John Williams might retire after he scores Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which is set to come out next summer. So, and that's not going to be directed by Spielberg. So this could be the last movie possibly that they ever are paired together for, which for me is very bittersweet. You know, like I said, big fan of Spielberg, and John Williams has scored a lot of Spielberg's movies. I would guess probably like at least 80%. It used to be like every Spielberg movie, but lately, you know, understandably so, he's been getting older, just hasn't been able to stay as active with scoring films. But setting aside any of those personal opinions or maybe even personal bias, new film directed by Steven Spielberg called The Fabelmans. This is actually based loosely on Spielberg's childhood and his upbringing, his discovery of loving films and wanting to become a filmmaker. And that is exactly what the main character, Samuel Fabelman, goes through. We see at the very beginning, when he's maybe 5 or 6 years old, see his first film in a theater, and he's just instantly hooked, and that's all he's thinking about is that film and specific parts of it that we see his reaction to. But that's really only the first fifth, maybe at most first fourth of the movie, because the majority of the film takes place during Sam's teenage years, his latter high school years, where he's really actually starting to make actual films and, you know, saving up his money to buy all this, you know, fancy equipment and gear to make, you know, what at the time were very high quality films. And this is already a concept that does appeal to me as a film lover, not so much as someone who, you know, I don't really have any desire to make films as my career or to direct, have a ton of respect for that field. Not really my thing personally, but it's definitely something that I do find incredibly fascinating, you know, needless to say, as I love to review movies on here. So you have already an intriguing premise, to me at least, a fantastic director, fantastic composer for the score, and a good solid cast. Nothing really crazy or out there as far as the casting choices go, at least to me. And then, you know, a bunch of younger actors as well that I don't know, so it's cool to see these new faces as well. And on top of that, this thing is clocking in at 151 minutes, about 2.5 hours in length. So you're expecting this big, long, grand story to be super fleshed out and developed. And for the most part, it is done to a great effect. Although there are a couple of moments, and I'll get to that later, I think maybe could have been worked on and there could have been more time committed to certain subplots. But for the most part, the film is able to stay very engaging for a majority of its time. And a great time that it is. I was happy with this movie, and I'm actually pretty bummed to see that it's doing almost nothing at the box office. The money-wise, it's barely made any. I've heard it's more successful on demand, which, okay, but in my opinion, this is really a movie you gotta see on the big screen, not only because Spielberg directing, John Williams doing the music, but Janusz Kaminski's cinematography. The movie looks great. As I had said earlier, it is somewhat based on Spielberg's actual life and his childhood. So you have a lot of the movie taking place in the mid-60s when he would have been in his teenage years. And first of all, the time period is captured, I think, greatly, but there's also just these fantastic looking scenes with, at a point they live in Arizona. And there are these great scenes around all these rock formations, especially where Sam and his buddies make all these films that just look gorgeous. It really is a movie that just begs to be seen on the big screen and heard through the speakers of the theater. I actually did listen to John Williams' score before this film. As you guys will see in my upcoming things I didn't review video, did a small little reaction to it. And before the film, I did think it was pretty good. You know, just decent, not one of my favorites of his, but certainly good for what it was. You know, I hadn't seen the movie yet, so I didn't have context to what these pieces were supposed to complement, if you will. And as I predicted, yeah, it's even better now seeing where it fits within certain scenes of the film, and especially with how the plot plays out. And maybe we'll hear a certain piece of music after something kind of crucial happens to one of the characters, which is all, you know, stuff to expect when you listen to a score before you see the movie and you're confused as to how it plays out. I know I'm kind of stating the obvious here, but I just was glad to sort of be vindicated from that point of view. With regards to the cast in this movie, I thought everyone did a really good job. I feel like I do sort of have to get the elephant out of the room, though. That is Michelle Williams, who was just recently nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actress in Motion Picture. Very well deserved. I'm glad to see her nominated now, having seen the film. If you guys saw my Golden Globes video, I picked Viola Davis for that award, and I didn't have a comment on Michelle Williams because I hadn't seen this movie yet. I would honestly still give it to Viola Davis because there are a couple moments where I think Michelle was a little bit over the top and maybe overdid some more emotional scenes with her character. Just want to point that out if there was anyone that was curious if my thoughts had changed at all. But great performance overall. As the mother of Samuel Fabelman, Paul Dano is in this one as well. He plays the father of Sam, and he's great too. There's a great sort of butting of heads at times with those two characters because, you know, Sam has this love for making films and it's just his passion and he wants to do it for his life, but his dad is just constantly like, well, you know, it's a hobby. It's not a real job. You gotta do something and find something that's actually useful and that you can use. I think I remember seeing where he's like really emphasizing things that can actually be put to use, which I think is just a great thing to explore. And for me personally, I do just understand both sides. I get Samuel, where he's coming from, his love of films. I obviously have a love of films too, but also, you know, Paul Dano in this, it's like I get where he's coming from as well. He was obviously raised in a much different time and had a different career path, and I'm just glad that Spielberg explored that, and I wonder if that was actually something that he went through with his own father. Seth Rogen plays the character Benny, who is a friend of Bert's. Bert is played by Paul Dano, and he is kind of what I expected him to be. He is like definitely one of the more comical characters in this movie, but I thought he did a great job. I thought he played his role exactly how it should have been played. Even though I will say that there is a subplot between him and Michelle Williams' character that is touched on and is actually made to be a bigger deal later on in the film, that I don't think was fleshed out as well as it should have been. I didn't feel the impact of this thing because this thing that happens is really supposed to be this big gut punch for the whole family. It's a big family. It's like 4 kids and the parents. And I didn't really feel that like weight, and especially that heartbreak that eventually comes onto the family later on. You know, not to really say what happens exactly, but that is sort of the feeling that they are trying to convey. So I do think that could have been improved, but I did like Seth Rogen in this movie. I was glad to see him here. And I thought all of the Fabelman children did very well here. They all worked well together. The actors, they were able to sell the emotions and the specific circumstances that those characters go through to a good extent. The obvious standout though is definitely Gabriel LaBelle. He's the main character in the film. He definitely has the most screen time as well, if I were to guess. And I think he's good. I wouldn't necessarily say he's award worthy personally. As far as, you know, the lead for this movie, he does a good job here. And I like that there was pretty much a scene with his character and every other person in his life that is important to him. There was like a crucial moment between him and his mother, him and his father, him and some of his siblings, some of his friends outside of his family as well. I liked that there were moments spent with each of these important people in his life. Especially this one scene with, I won't say the actor's name in case no one knows, but it's with a family member of his. And it was fantastic. This is definitely probably one of my favorite cameos of this entire year. Love that scene, love that actor. Performance was phenomenal. Great stuff. And yeah, in general, I just enjoyed watching the journey that Sam went through in this movie, trying to become a filmmaker and all the trials and tribulations that he went through in the process. You know, I'll be honest, I didn't actually know that this was based on Spielberg's life when I watched it. I only just read about it before sitting down to record this. And I'm very excited to rewatch it from that perspective. I don't know if I'll see it in the theater again, but I could definitely see myself, getting this maybe on Blu-ray at some point in the future. If I have any more complaints, the film focuses a lot more on Sam's school life in the last third of the film. We see a little bit of bullying that he has to endure. There's a romance introduced as well. And this, though, I think done well overall, did kind of confuse me. I don't know why they chose this time to focus now on what was going on with school, any social pressures maybe he had to endure. Like, it sort of pretended like he wasn't in school before. Maybe it was during the summertime. Maybe I was just too dumb to notice that. I don't know. I was just confused as to why Spielberg chose now to focus on this when, Sam's and he's a teenager. He's in high school. It's a big part of a teenager's life is what they go through in high school and their experiences during that time in their life. I loved The Fabelmans. I'm glad I got to see it. I didn't love how far I had to drive out, though. I had to drive like 30 minutes away. Not fun, but whatever. I'm glad I saw it. It was worth the drive for sure. There was something I was thinking about saying, but I think it might cause some people to get a little bit upset or like highly disagree with me. So I'll pick a safer statement and just say that I think this is one of Spielberg's best movie he's made this century. I think that's a fair statement to make. Great film. I highly recommend you check it out, especially if you are a film lover, if you have any aspirations to choose a field within film, if you're, a younger individual or you're involved in films already. Even if you're not, I think you would get some sort of enjoyment out of this. I would give this a solid 9 out of 10. I'm confident that this won't actually be the last time I see a John Williams and Spielberg collaboration in the theater because, they'll do replays of the Indiana Jones movies or Jaws or Jurassic Park or whatever in theaters all the time. So, I'm sure this won't be the last time, but this will be the last new film from these guys. So, yeah, kind of sad, but all things have to end at some point. I'm excited to know what you guys think. If you have any thoughts, please let me know in the comments. Are you looking forward to the new Indiana Jones? I haven't seen the trailer yet, so I don't know what it's going to be about, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Excited to see how James Mangold is going to take on that character in that world. But until next time, that's all I have for you guys. Peace out.